days of yore from Britain's shore.
We're in Montreal, Quebec right now, on the first part of our pilgrimage to Vimy. For those of you who do not know why we are going, we're going to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, which was a defining moment in Canadian history.
The dauntless hero came and planted firm Britannia's flag on Canada's fair domain. Here may to wave our boast, our pride, and joined in love.
On the 5th day of June, 1944, just as you see them here, a fleet of more than 4,000 ships put out from England. This was D-Day, 4th anniversary of the Battle of Dunkirk, and the Allied armies were striking back. The morning of June 6th, this was the battleground. Fierce fighting around Caen. Vast squadrons of bombers and transports led the way. More than 11,000 planes spearheading the attack. Paratroopers landed in Normandy behind the coastal defenses. Landings made with timing and precision. Barges approached shore ready for instant action. Some bearing artillery and rocket guns already opening fire. Another of the great decisive battles of world history has been joined. This is D-Day.
At 3:30 this morning, the government received official word that the invasion of Western Europe had begun. Word was also received that the Canadian troops were among the Allied forces who landed this morning on the northern coast of France. Canada will be proud to learn that our troops are being supported by units of the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force. The great landing in Western Europe is the opening of what we hope and believe will be the decisive phase of the war against Germany. The fighting is certain to be heavy, bitter, and costly. We must not expect early results. We should be prepared for local reverses as well as successes. No one can say how long this phase of the war may last, but we have every reason for confidence in the final outcome. I cannot better express to the people of Canada the government's feelings at this moment than by giving to you the words of General Crerar, the Canadian Army Commander, as conveyed to the Canadian Assault Forces on the eve of their embarkation. I have, said General Crerar, complete confidence in our ability to meet the tests which lie ahead. As Canadians, we inherit military characteristics which were feared by the enemy in the last great war. I should like to add this word. Let the hearts of all in Canada today be filled with silent prayer for the success of our own and allied forces and for the early liberation of the peoples of Europe.
The Battle of Beaumont-Hamel started with a massive explosion, designed to rattle or eliminate much of the German opposition. But the Germans didn't budge, and the British offensive was delayed, just long enough to warn the enemy and ensure their machine guns were trained in crossfire at the cuts in barbed wire. The young men of the Newfoundland Regiment knew something was wrong. The chatter of machine guns never slowed. But orders were orders, and just after 9, they went over the top anyway. They didn't stand a chance. A single dead, withered tree marked the beginning of no man's land. They called it the danger tree. Few, if any, made it past. Over 700 bent into the fire. The next morning, fewer than 70 answered roll call. But Beaumont-Hamel was one fight from which Newfoundland never recovered. After the war, it staggered along, debt spiraling out of control, until eventually in 1949,
Joseph Smallwood, the victorious leader of the Confederate forces,
Confederation with Canada.
Hello, I'm Peter Mansbridge at Vimy Ridge in France. This is sacred ground for Canadians, the earth here stained with the blood of many of those who came before us. This monument remembers an epic battle of the First World War, a day when Canadian forces stormed this ridge, a strategic ridge, and took it from German soldiers. It was perhaps our greatest military victory, but it came at tremendous cost. More than 10,000 casualties, 4,000 of them dead. Here it is, Canada's most famous battlefield. 100 years later, the craters from the pounding of thousands of shells still clearly evident, still haunting the ground they tore apart. The Germans had captured this land in the early months of the First World War. France then lost tens of thousands of its soldiers trying to take it back. They never did. Instead, it was the Canadian Army that made that happen. In April of 1917, when for the first time Canadians fought as one army. It was, many say, the moment Canada became a nation. These are the Canadian trenches. The German trenches, at some points, less than 50 meters away. For 4 years, this is what World War was like. Both sides dug in and barely moving, taking huge risks with terrible losses to capture short distances. With it all, extreme bravery on both sides. Let me tell you a story about the Canadians, about one particular soldier, Thane McDowell. He was from Ottawa. He was a captain. He led his men over the top, going out over the trenches, across no man's land toward the German lines. He left with 150 soldiers. When he got to the other side, he turned around, there were only 3 of them left. Yet he managed to convince the Germans he had a lot more with him, and they surrendered. And he found himself with 75 German prisoners. He was awarded the Victoria Cross, Canada's and the Commonwealth's highest medal for bravery.
One of the things that strikes you when you read the names and the backgrounds of so many young men who died for Canada is their age. 21, 20, 27, 19, 42, 18, 19, 27, and 21. And then we come to Private J.G. Jameson, 87th Battalion, Canadian Infantry. Died the 9th of April, 1917, day one of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Age 17. Private Jameson lied about his age. The legal age was 18 to join the Canadian Army. He died at age 17. Like a lot of young Canadians who felt they should be here fighting for Canada, for king and country. So they came here, and they died here, and now they lie here.
It'll be at one of these big auctions, you know, so some of you might be coming back trying to buy it, so we've got to put all our money together and buy that lollipop back, you know. Thank you very, very much.